Hello everybody! In this video, we're going to install DHCP on Windows 2022. This video includes a lab with autograding. As prerequisites, we're going to need one Windows virtual machine running an Oracle Virtualbox and 8 gigs of RAM on our host machine. If you haven't installed VirtualBox, or if you haven't installed a virtual machine before, please check out my other videos, which will be popping up right about now as suggested videos. Alright, first we'll go over why we need DHCP. So imagine you're a student and you go to the library and you want to connect to the wireless at the library with your phone. So, the first thing you're going to want to do is connect to the wireless. So there's going to be some wireless access point that you're going to connect to. But after that, you're going to need to get an IP address. Remember, every single machine that's on the network needs an IP address. When you take your phone into the library, it does not yet have an IP address. And that's where DHCP comes in. So how does this work? You have your phone and it sends a message to every single machine on the network asking for an IP. Hey, give me an IP. This has a technical term, which is a broadcast. Broadcast is when I send a message to every single machine on the network. Every other machine on the network, all the laptops, the phones, all of them, they all ignore this message, all except for one. And the one machine that pays attention to this is called the DHCP server. Sometimes a DHCP server is the same as your router. It probably is at home. In a big network, it won't be though. And in this lab, it won't be. So that one machine says, oh, so you want an IP address? Well, here's an IP address. You can use this one. The original phone, one more time, broadcast to everybody else saying, I got an IP address, here it is. Not being dramatic unnecessarily, it's because if there's another DHCP server on the network, then that DHCP server will know that this machine has an address already. Last thing that happens is the DHCP server send a message saying all is good, and after this, the phone or the DHCP client is on the network, ready to go with network access. So the first thing I'm going to do is start Oracle Virtualbox. And here I have 2 virtual machines that are left over from my DNS lab. For this one, I'm going to want to keep those virtual machines and make one more. So I'll right click on DNS server, select clone, and clone my machine. The first thing I'm going to do, so I will label my machine DHCP_server. And then this next part is really important. At the MAC address policy, I need to select generate new MAC address for all network adapters. If I don't select this, none of the machines will talk to each other. So again, super important. MAC address policy, generate new MAC address for all network adapters. So now I'm going to click next. Then I'll click clone. And now I have to wait. In this video, I've assumed that you already have 2 virtual machines, but if you don't, that's not a problem. You just have to repeat that cloning step one more time. Okay, so next, the machine that was named DNS client before, I'm going to relabel. And I'm just going to label it as client because it could be the DHCP client or the DNS client. So to do that, I'll right click on the machine. I'll select settings and general, and in the name field, I'll just write in client and click OK. And this will label my machine as client. So now I have 3 VMs, DNS server, which I had before, client, and DHCP server. For this next step, I'm going to change the network settings, the VirtualBox network settings for all 3 VMs. The way I do that is I'm going to right-click the virtual machine, select Settings, then on the left side, I'll select Network, and then I'm going to look at this pull-down where it says Attached To. For all of these, I want this to be internal network. Internal networking means that the machines do not see the outside world, and the outside world does not see these machines. And that's super important, especially when you have a DHCP server. If you have a DHCP server that's sending IP addresses to the outside world, you can crash your entire network. So don't do that. This has actually happened before at my school multiple times. It's super bad when it does. Don't let this happen to you. Again, be sure that the VirtualBox network settings are set to internal for all 3 virtual machines. Okay, so now I'm going to edit my DHCP server and I'm going to change the network settings on this machine. So I'll start the machine, which I will do by selecting the machine and then clicking Start. To log in, I'm going to go to Input, Keyboard, Insert, Control-Alt-Delete. And I'll type in my password, which is capital I, love this class, $123. Capital I, love this class, $123. So now I'm starting up. I'm going to close all of these windows to come up. And in the search bar, I'm going to type Ethernet. This will bring up Ethernet settings, which I will click. I'll click on this unidentified network. And here we go. So IP settings, I'm going to click edit and change my IP address. The IP address should be 192.168.0.50. Again, 192.168.0.50. My subnet mask will be 255.255.255.0, and my preferred DNS will stay at 192.168.0.3. Here we've assumed you've done the DNS lab already, but if you haven't, don't worry about it. Next, I'm going to turn on DHCP. So in the search bar, I'm going to type server, which will bring up Server Manager, and I'm going to click on Server Manager. But before I do that, I'm going to remove DNS. So you might remember, because I cloned DNS_server, that means this machine has DNS on it, which I don't want. So what I'm going to do is go to Manage, Remove Roles and Features. So again, Manage, and then go to Remove Roles and Features. If you didn't clone DNS server, you don't need to do this, but I think it's important to know that you can put DNS onto a machine and you can take it off. And so that's why I did it this way, so you can see how this works. But again, if you didn't do DNS in the first place, you don't need to remove the service. After clicking Remove Roles and Features, I'll click Next a bunch of times until I get to Server Roles, and then I'll uncheck DNS Server. I'll click Remove Features, then click Next again, and then finally Remove. And then I need to wait a little bit here. When that's done, I'll click Close, and now DNS is no longer on this machine. Just to be safe, I will reboot the machine, which I do with Windows, Power, Restart. And when it comes back, the logon is the same. Input, keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete. My password is I love this class $123. I love this class $123. I'm going to log in. And after I log in, now I'm going to install dhcp-server. So I'm going to go to the search bar. I'm going to type server. This will bring up Server Manager. And I'm going to click Server Manager. So now I'm going to add DHCP. So the way I do that is I go to Manage and Add Roles and Features. Again, Manage, Add Roles and Features. I'm going to click Next until I get to Server Roles. When I get to Server Roles, I'm going to check dhcp-server. So this will add DHCP to my machine. I click Add Features, and then I click Next, and Next, and Next all the way through until I click Install. All right, so now I'm going to rename a machine within the operating system. Before, I just changed the label within VirtualBox, but now I'm going to change the name as it's known by the operating system. In the search bar, I'm going to type rename, and this will bring up view your PC name. So I'm going to click on that, view your PC name. So on the right side, there's a button, rename this PC. I'm going to click rename this PC. And now I can give it a new name. The new name is going to be dhcp-server. So I'm giving it a name related to what it does so that when you work on it, you know exactly what it is. So again, dhcp-server. Next. It forces me to restart, so I'll click Restart Now, then Continue, and my computer will restart. I'll log back in. So I'll go to Input, Keyboard, Insert Control-Alt-Delete. The password is capital I, love this class $123, capital I, love this class $123. Now I'm going to configure DHCP. So I'm going to go back to the search bar. I'm going to type in DHCP, and that will bring up for me the DHCP app, which I'm going to click. So right here we have DHCP. You see the name of my server, dhcp-server. I'm going to click on the triangle right by it, and that's going to bring up IPv4 and IPv6. So you can set up DHCP for both IPv4 and IPv6. We are going to set it up just for IPv4. I'm going to right-click on IPv4 and select New Scope. A scope is just a range of IP addresses that this server is going to be configured to give out. So I'm making a new scope. I'm going to click Next here. The name of my scope, I'm going to just name it DHCP_scope. The description, I'm going to give it DHCP_scope for Dr. Wu's lab. And it really does not matter what you give it. I'll click Next. For the address range, so these are the IP addresses that I'm going to be giving out. The range is going to start with 192.168.0.51 and end with 192.168.0.100. So that is, I think, 50 addresses right there in that range that I'm going to give out. This stuff down here controls the subnet mask that's handed out, and that's going to be 255.255.255.0. So all of the IP addresses that this machine gives out are between 192.168.0.51 and 192.168.0.100, and the mask will be 255.255.255.0. So then I'm going to click Next. Exclusions. So this means an IP address that I'm not going to give out. And I might set some exclusions if I know that there's a server in this range where I've set a static IP and I don't want to give this IP address up. So I'm just going to show how it works here, and you should follow along. 192.168.0.52. And that means I'm not going to be giving out this IP address, even though it is in the range of IP addresses that I'm giving out. So I click Add, and you see it right there. I'm not going to be giving out this IP address. I'm saving it for something else. I'll click Next. The least duration is how long this IP is going to last. We're going to just give it the default 8 days. That's fine. And then we'll click Next. So when it asks me if I want to configure DHCP options, I'm going to select Yes and click Next. And so what are these? The idea here is that when I hand out a DHCP address, I may also hand out information about the gateway. I may hand out information about the DNS servers. So I'm going to do all that when I hand out the DHCP addresses. So for the parent domain, they're all going to be, all these machines are going to be the drwu.us.domain. So they're going to end with drwu.us. So for parent domain, I'm going to type in drwu.us. The DNS server. So the DNS server's name is DNS-server, and the IP address is 192.168.0.3, and that's already in there. All the computers that are getting DHCP addresses from this server will be looking at DNS-server for its DNS information, and the IP address of that is 192.168.0.3. Then I'll click Next. Windows Server, I'm going to ignore all this. This is old stuff, and I'll click Next. And when it asks if I want to activate the scope now, I'll click Yes. So that makes it active, and it's running now. And you can see here in the center pane, it says it's active. So to make the blue exclamations go away, I'm going to go to the center pane, right-click on IPv4, select Refresh, and now everything is green checkmarks and happy. Next, I'm going to check to see that all my settings are correct. So I'm going to use a dhcp_server.ps1 to autograde my work. So you see I've checked DHCP at my desktop. I'm going to drag and drop that onto my desktop of my VM. And this works, again, because I have guest additions installed and because I have bidirectional drag and drop enabled. So once that script is on my desktop inside the VM, I'm going to right-click it, run with PowerShell, and if I see 12 tests pass, then I know everything is good. All right, so now my server is in good shape, and I'm going to configure my client. Next, I'm going to configure the client, and what I'm going to do is set it so that its IP address comes from DHCP, which is the whole reason we set up dhcp-server in the first place. And I'm also going to rename it to be client. So I'm going to start up my VM by selecting client on the left side and then clicking the start button. When this comes up, I'm going to log in by going to Input, Keyboard, Insert Control-Alt-Delete. I'm going to type in my password, which is capital I, love this class, $123, capital I, love this class, $123. Again, the $123 is what makes it secure. I'm going to close any windows that happen to come up, like the server manager here. I'm going to close that. So now I'm going to go in the search bar, and I'm going to type in Ethernet, which will bring up Ethernet settings. And again, I'm setting the Ethernet settings to use DHCP. I'll click on Unidentified Network. Under IP settings, I'll click Edit. Right now it's at manual, and that's what I'm going to change. I'm going to change that to be DHCP. So again, where it says manual, in that pull down, select DHCP or automatic, and then click Save. The DNS settings will also be DHCP, so all of my information about my name servers will come from DHCP. All right, so now I'm going to rename this machine within the operating system. So in the search bar, I'll type rename. I will select view your PC name. Then I'll click rename this PC. In the name field, I'll type client. And then I'll click next. This is going to force me to restart my computer, so I'll click restart now. So once again, I'm going to log in. I'm going to go input, keyboard, insert, control, alt, delete. And again, my password is capital I, love this class, $123. Capital I, love this class, $123. Okay, so after I log in, I'm going to close all these windows. So now again, I'm going to check my work with my PowerShell script. So I'm going to copy and paste this script into my client. Again, I can do this as long as I have VMware guest editions installed and I have bidirectional copy and paste on. So there are 5 tests here, 5 tests. And if these work, that means that I've set up things correctly. All right, so now I'm going to test. I'm going to go back to the search bar, type PowerShell, and this will give me a command prompt. And then I'll type at the command line ipconfig/all. ipconfig/all. A few things here that I'm going to look at. The first is the host name, which is client. So you remember I set this before, and now this proves that it was done correctly. So if you look at this line right here, DHCP server, the DHCP server is 192.168.0.50. That is the IP address of my DHCP server, and this proves that the IP address I'm getting is from DHCP. If you remember, we had set some DHCP options to give to all machines that are getting DHCP from us. One of them was the DNS server, 192.168.0.3. One of them was the connection-specific DNS suffix, which is drwu.us. So all the things that we set up are working as expected. All right, so now we're going to check our work on the DHCP server side. So if we open up DHCP, the way we do that is we go to the search bar, we type DHCP, and we click the DHCP plugin. Here we are. I'm going to open up my windows a little bit. Click on the triangle by DHCP server. And I'm going to click on IPv4. Then I'm going to click on scope. And then I'm going to click on address leases. And this section right here records the IP addresses that we've given out as part of DHCP. So the IP addresses that the DHCP server has given out. And you can see that it's given out 192.168.0.51. That matches what we saw when we looked on the client side, 192.168.0.51. So what you see here is that from the server side, the DHCP server side, it looks like it's working. We've given out this IP address. And from the client side, we see that DHCP is working, and we've received this IP address. All right, that's pretty much it. Hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.